A little girl followed her mother to an animal shelter to pick out a puppy, but instead found herself witnessing a heartbreaking moment. A sick pit bull was about to be euthanized. That's when she stepped forward and did something shocking. "Stop! Please don't do it!" The sharp, panicked cry of a little girl pierced through the quiet hallway of the animal shelter. The shout was so unexpected that the shelter worker fumbled with the leash in her hands. The door to the metal cage was already half open. Inside the cage, a frail pit bull lay curled up in the corner, his body trembling as if he knew what was coming next. The shelter worker, Miss Thompson, glanced over her shoulder in shock. Behind her stood a small blonde girl with wide, pleading eyes, her voice full of urgency. How had she even gotten here? Visitors were never allowed in this part of the shelter. The girl had burst through the doors just as Ms. Thompson was about to lead the pit bull to his final destination. "Sweetheart, this isn't a good time," she began, trying to keep her composure. But the girl wouldn't back down. "Please don't let this dog die," she begged. Miss Thompson looked at the pit bull. His ribs were visible beneath his dull, patchy fur. His eyes were clouded with illness, and his body barely moved. This dog had been through so much. His time had run out. At least that's what they told themselves. Rex had been at the shelter for too long, and his illness was draining their already limited resources. No one had come forward to adopt him, and his condition had only worsened. This was the only choice left. Or so she thought. But the desperation in the girl's voice made Miss Thompson hesitate. The leash was still in her hand. The door to the cage was still open. Rex had yet to move, resigned to whatever fate awaited him. Then a woman appeared behind the girl, breathing heavily as if she had been running. She was unsure of what was happening, but she could sense the gravity of the situation. Sarah reached out to her daughter, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder, but the girl remained rooted in place, her gaze locked onto the pit bull. "Mom," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Look at him." Sarah's gaze followed her daughter's, landing on the pit bull's frail body. His breath was shallow, his eyes dim. She bit her lip, torn between logic and the emotion swelling in her chest. "Emily, we should let them do their job," Sarah said softly, though her words lacked conviction. Emily shook her head slowly. "No, not yet." Miss Thompson took a deep breath and glanced at the vet technician standing nearby, waiting for her to give the go-ahead. Time stretched, and the room grew heavy with the weight of the decision that hung in the air. "Please," Emily whispered again. Her voice was barely audible, but it was filled with an urgency that neither Miss Thompson nor Sarah could understand. Sarah sighed, knowing there was no easy way to walk away from this. She knelt beside her daughter, looking into her eyes. "Sweetheart, this dog is very sick. He's suffering. Sometimes we have to make hard choices to help them." But Emily didn't respond. Her eyes remained locked on Rex. Then, with a sudden movement, she stepped closer to the cage. Miss Thompson flinched, instinctively tightening her grip on the leash. But Emily didn't stop. She reached through the bars, her small hand trembling, as she stretched it toward Rex. The pit bull blinked slowly, his head tilting slightly as he sniffed the air. For the first time, his gaze truly focused on the little girl's outstretched fingers. Sarah held her breath. Miss Thompson watched in silence, her hands frozen, unable to pull the dog away. No one moved. No one spoke. Time seemed to stand still as Emily's fingers brushed against Rex's nose. The dog didn't flinch. He didn't growl. He simply looked at the girl with tired, sad eyes. Emily knelt so she was level with the cage, her face just inches away from Rex. "It's okay," she whispered. "You're safe now." As she gazed at the trembling dog, her mind drifted back to the start of this momentous day. That morning Emily had woken up with a strange feeling in her chest, a mixture of excitement and anxiety. Today was the day. She and her mom were going to the animal shelter, and Emily had been waiting for this moment forever. She had begged her mother for a dog for months, ever since she saw their neighbor's golden retriever playing in the yard. She had watched that dog chase after a ball, tail wagging, pure joy radiating from its every movement. She wanted that joy in her life too, but Sarah had been hesitant. Raising a dog was a big responsibility. She didn't want Emily to lose interest after a few weeks. Still, after endless pleading and promises, Sarah had finally agreed. "Well, look," she had said, "but we're not bringing home a dog just because it looks cute. We have to be sure." Emily had nodded eagerly, but in her heart she already knew. She would find the perfect dog. When they arrived at the shelter, Emily ran inside, filled with excitement. Rows of cages stretched before her, filled with dogs of all sizes. Some barked excitedly, others cowered in the corners. Then at the far end of the room she saw him. A pit bull lay motionless in his cage. He didn't wag his tail. He didn't even lift his head. Something about the way he lay there, so still, so quiet, tugged at her heart. "Mom," she had whispered, "look at him. He looks so sad." Sarah knelt beside her daughter, her own heart aching at the sight of the pit bull. "Sweetie, he's very sick," she had said gently. "I don't know if we can help him." But Emily shook her head. "He just needs someone to love him." Then Miss Thompson approached, her expression grim. "I'm sorry," she said, "but this dog is scheduled to be euthanized today. We've done everything we can, but he hasn't improved." The words hit Emily like a punch to the gut. Euthanized. The word echoed in her mind. Cold. Final. She couldn't let that happen. But what could she do? Now standing in the back room, Emily felt her heart race as she reached through the bars. Her fingers brushed against Rex's fur. For the first time his eyes seemed to clear. Miss Thompson and Sarah watched in stunned silence. Then Emily reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, crumpled piece of paper. She unfolded it carefully, smoothing it out on the floor. Everyone stared at the paper. It was a child's drawing, a dog with a heart above its head. Next to it in wobbly handwriting were the words, "I'll be your friend." And that was when it all clicked. Emily had come prepared. She had written a promise before she even met Rex. Sarah looked at her daughter in disbelief. "Emily, honey, we can't just—" "Yes, we can," Emily interrupted. "He needs us, Mom. He needs me." Miss Thompson hesitated, then nodded. "All right. You can take him home." And that was the day Rex got a second chance, because a little girl believed in him when no one else did.